Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jean Till, and on today's show, we're visiting with April Young and Kathy Jordan. They are both new spiritual directors, and they serve out of the Emmaus House in Des Moines.
So Merry Christmas. We can continue to greet each other in these 12 days, and as a year winds down on the calendar, and we've already begun a new season of grace in the liturgical year. We're grateful again to our benefactors, the Sarans, who helped this show to be aired on Spirit Catholic Radio and the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. Thank you, the Sarans, the Saint Sarans here, both of Council Bluffs and Des Moines, who help us to put the good news and announce that a Savior is born to us. And so we're very grateful to them. A great week, signature feasts again. We move right into the day after. Our permanent deacons, St. Stephen, their kind of forebear in that way, offering himself, giving his vision of what heaven is, even as he paid the ultimate sacrifice. St. John, the beloved disciple, the following day. And then, of course, today, Thomas Becket, pastor and bishop, who followed himself at cross purposes with his own brother. But yesterday's Feast of the Holy Innocents, we think about our country still kind of wrestling with, even after the Dobbs decision, but, the loss of children in through so many ways, war and other ways in which they've been targeted in regions around the world. And we have that sense then of the poignancy even of Christmas coming in, I think captured very well by Angela Limo O'Donnell, her own poem on Christ's sighting, December 25th. Here comes the dark, the dearth of the year, and here comes Christ again, born when he's least expected and most needed. Now and here in the midst of famine comes this feast, fit for fools, surrounded by the ruin we have made of our own earth. The rivers black with mourning for the jewels they once were, the air thick with smoke from the charred trees. Now in the darkness we fall to our knees in wonder at the baby birth just for us. We deserve nothing, no small sign of luck. In a world ripped by rage, choked with anger, love lies sleeping in a dirty manger. And so I think, the awareness of what Christ entered into in all of this, and our hearts go out to those who perhaps have lost children, perhaps through natural means, other things that continue to, a time where, the absence of our beloved is also keenly felt. And so grief or sadness is not unfamiliar to many of our people, even as our church, our world is saying, rejoice, rejoice. And so even for me, I thought the poignancy of a family with whom I'm very close, Kelleran and Brett Rousey, was fortunate to witness their wedding. They have two lovely daughters and a son, but found them, again, that God had graced them with a pregnancy only 2 weeks ago to find out that, unfortunately, the baby had perished, unbeknownst to Kelleran at the time. So they brought the young Dominic into the world, induced his already having died, bringing him forward, and the perspective of grace, thanking for the prayers of so many people. While very hard, Brett and I really feel this was a very grace-filled experience, and we attribute that to the many people who have prayed. Baby boy Dominic Gerard Rousey's remains joined us late afternoon. After a bit of a battle, my placenta came out and I didn't need surgery. The nurses, doctors, and midwives were wonderful. We've been very graced today. After they examined the baby, it seems like Dominic's cord near his belly button got twisted too tight from flipping and moving about, and just cut off oxygen and nutrients to the poor boy. A freak thing. We both have held him and marveled at his tiny toes and fingers. We are at peace. Thank you and love you. And so that witness there of a young child and who now beholds his Heavenly Father's face. And so that mystery of God's ways are not our ways, but commending him to the Lord, and the witness to the truth of every human life. Every human person is a child of God, meant for that destiny of heaven, to join the Christ child who comes to us so that all children might rejoice in communion with the Father and the Spirit.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be visiting with April Young and Kathy Jordan, both new spiritual directors serving at the Emmaus House in Des Moines. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. And on today's show, we're visiting with April Young and Cathy Jordan, both fairly new spiritual directors working out of the Emmaus House in Des Moines.
And it's my privilege to have association with both these women in various capacities, but they're great-souled women of faith and infectious joy when you're around them as well, and humility also. So, trying to draw them out this morning will probably be, not their natural disposition, but they're going to do it because they're the great witnesses to the ones they love and the one whom they love. We think about spiritual direction, but let's think about how the path led. April, your affiliation with the diocese was not exactly the spiritual direction side of the brain, right?
That's correct. People say that they kind of recognize my name, and I've been around for a while. I think I started with the diocese in 2008. Mm-hmm. I was assistant to the finance department.
Oh, what a year to start in finances, 2008.
It was a great year to invest. It was a great year to invest. And, but what that afforded me was the exposure to, vocations and the vocations director. And, at that time, I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life. And I took the job because I knew I could be an administrative assistant. And, at the time, I began discerning a religious vocation. And what do you do when you begin discerning a vocation? You get a spiritual director. And what I found out was I thought it was going to be very prescriptive. Pray these 3 prayers and call me in the morning. And that's not what spiritual direction is. And it really became so much more than that, and opened up my life in so many ways, not so many ways, every way, and really discerned my calling. Originally thought I was called to hospital chaplaincy, tried it out, tried many things out. And in continuing spiritual direction through all that time, just continued to listen to the Spirit and to continue to journey with my own spiritual director, helping me listen to where God was calling my life, through through life, through lots of eras in my life, as I like to say, but, and then helping me discern what I felt like I was using the best parts of my gifts, where I felt like I was the most alive, where I was experiencing an increase of faith, hope, and love, and found myself in my own place of spiritual direction and offering it to other people.
Tremendous. And so it wasn't prescripted, here's how I get from point A to point Z, in this way, but how life serves it up to you in a way. Right. And there's no, when stepping forward in good faith, there's no mistakes, right? All these things are used. And to find out that maybe this isn't one's calling is itself a grace of God, that a disclosure, a revelation in that way. So we want to hear more, but we better bring in Cathy Jordan here as well, who's still with the diocese, vocation specialist, but so capable in so many ways. So you get asked to do many things in helping us with our strategic visioning and other things too. But how does this woman originally from north central Iowa, come into this role, and maybe just talk a little bit about your path?
Yeah, I think I was thinking on the way over here, how long have I been in spiritual direction? But if I would look, I could Google it. Not that Google knows, but because it coincides with the first Christ Our Life conference. Mm. So after that very first conference in Des Moines, a group of people from my church got together.
Help your bishop. What year was that, roughly?
Yeah, that would be great. Do you remember, Jean?
I think it was I
meant to look at it.
2008 or 10. I'll find out.
We'll put it in the same ballpark for both of you. Okay.
Yeah. So, so a group of people in our church kind of got together. We were sort of on fire after that conference and started, talking about what we could do in our own parish to keep, the Spirit alive. And one of the things that came out of that was we started the program that was called Christ Renews His Parish. And when we did
CHIRP
that,
for short.
CHIRP, exactly, CHIRP. Yeah. And when we did that, we were encouraged as the people who served as the spiritual directors. That was kind of the title in that program, but it isn't like a spiritual director that we're talking about. We were encouraged to get our own spiritual director. And so that's kind of when I started that path. I laugh. I walked in. I had no idea what I was doing. And my spiritual director was so much more comfortable with silence than I was. And we just kind of sat a lot, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I always think about that, like, why did I go back? But I think it was the Spirit.
Or why were you allowed to come back? Right?
That's a better question, Bishop.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that would be, one who's been both in spiritual direction for many, many years, and just lost my longtime spiritual director, Monsignor James Bard from Dubuque, beloved man to so many, but privileged his wisdom. Yes, he had a psychology degree, so he could see things from that perspective, but lived his faith as a priest and always helped me to lighten up. But, that time where, with certain directees, there's more silence than others, and not to force it, if you will. So, so you found spiritual direction to be life-giving, but also maybe switching the chair around.
Yeah. I think after I had, well, it was quite a while. I think I don't know if I've been thinking about it. I really don't know how long I've been thinking about it, but it did started to creep into my mind. Kind of like, I wonder if I could. This has just been so life-giving for me. I wonder if I could do this for others. Like, I wonder if I could do this. And of course, I thought, well, of course you can't. And then,
who said that?
Who do you think you are?
Yeah. And then I had a friend who's also a spiritual director who said, have you ever thought about spiritual direction? And I thought, you know what? I have. So don't underestimate, the power of calling what you see in others, because that was really a catalyst for me to then I hadn't even brought it up to my own spiritual director, and that was kind of the catalyst for me to do that, and then discernment from there. So.
Yeah. So, in the Catholic Church, can one just hang up one shingle and say, I'm a spiritual director, or is there a certain kind of formation that's expected? It might vary, but how does one come into that?
Yeah. There certainly are a lot of very wise people. I think there's definitely a formation process, and I think very needed. And I think mostly because it's formation is about the director. I've been through CPE, clinical pastoral education for chaplains, and it's a very similar process. It's about so formation, at least in my experience, was about me. It was about my stuff and making me as free as possible to meet my directee where they are and to make a space for them to be the person that God created them to be, and to help them discern where God is calling them. And there are many wonderful programs in the Midwest, and a person can discern if they want virtual, if they want in person. There's really kind of what I would call like the golden donut between Iowa and like the states surrounding it. There are a number of wonderful programs, but I do think in the Catholic tradition, a lot of priests are trained through IPF through their formation, and then there's also a lot of talented lay people who are trained through a lot of lay programs throughout the Midwest and beyond.
I think about Charles de Foucault, the little brother who said in his own prayer, "Open my eyes, O loving Jesus, Lord, that I may see. I do not ask now to see you and know you. Give me light to know myself as I am, for if I know myself, I shall know you." And, of course, Augustine would kind of resonate with that as well. So, and it's not just then a kind of a self-help, and feeling any kind of narcissism, but one must be in touch with the depths of the Lord and the Spirit dwelling within, and the wounds that inevitably we all bear in this way, not so that we can then, therapeutically overcome all of those, but that they're there. We name them. So there are programs, obviously Creighton University, and there's Christian spirituality. Kathy, but you found another program that worked for you.
Yeah, I participated in the program out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, from the Franciscan Spirituality Center up there. So, that was a 3-year program, and it was a nice, easy drive from Des Moines. So,
wait a minute,
it is not scenic at times, but there's no direct road there. No.
So it was nice. But
remote options though too for part of it. Or?
Yes. Well, in fact, I started in 2020, so we actually started pretty much all remote. Like we did our first year, we never gathered as a group, and then we, as it went on, kind of gathered a little bit more. But the program, I think, was designed to gather 4 times a year as a group. And then everything else is kind of remote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I was always a little circumspect about until the retreat master who gave the region bishops retreat last year said he himself offers and went to spiritual direction, obviously ideal for face-to-face. and for you, April, particularly, the location of the Emmaus House is a sanctuary almost, if you will, and a very comfortable place. And Kathy, I know you use that. But what would one expect? What somebody says, I'm hearing all this talk, but what is it? What's going on here? And is it simply like confession, or what would be some distinctions?
That's interesting. How do you pin down a cloud? I'm not sure.
No, April, you cannot hear confessions.
I suspect, like many bartenders, you have.
In my experience in pastoral care, I have always said, I can hear your confession. I just can't do anything about it. If there's something you want to talk about, we can talk about it. We say, our founder, Gene Marr, said, the heart of Ignatian spirituality is reflection on experience in light of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So you bring your whole life. You bring your experience, your relationships, your relationship with God, your prayer, what is working, what is not working, what you're bringing to God. I think it is especially meaningful what you're not bringing to God. What you're thinking you can hide from God. God already knows. And I say that with all tenderness and understanding, because there's plenty of things that I think that I can hide from God. But that's a great thing to bring to spiritual direction, or something you're struggling with, and your joys and the things that bring you a lot of consolation. Bring the joy you have at your first grandchild, and how God is revealing God's self to you in a new way. So that's, you bring everything. I kind of start with a list of questions. How would you describe this season of your life? How are you and God getting along? What's your prayer life like? What methods of prayer, or what ways of praying are you most at home with? What's your prayer rhythms like? Do you like to pray in the morning? Do you like to pray in the evening? Is going to daily mass very important to you? Are there certain litanies? Are there certain is the rosary very important to you? Is Mother Mary very important to you? And what's that relationship like? So everything, you bring your whole life.
Do you pray to Jesus?
Do you pray to Jesus?
The Father? Or...
Do you have more of a stronger relationship with God, the Father, or Jesus, or the Holy Spirit? Or what does God look like when you pray? Or does it not really have? Does God not really have an image?
Yeah. So you made reference. Thank you very much. I think that's a marvelous entree. Ignatian spirituality would be a current of spirituality, and the masters here, which obviously the Jesuit tradition relies on, and it's been expanded, obviously, for many. Kathy, but going to a Franciscan program, would that be your orientation, or would there be other strands of spirituality that you would look to kind of to orient you?
I think that my own experience of spiritual direction has been a lot of Ignatian. So I've had that kind of in my own experience of it. The program that I went through, even though it was through a Franciscan spirituality center, wasn't primarily focused on Franciscan. So we we spent weekends on all different kinds of spirituality. So it was kind of all encompassing. I think, finding God in all things is, a thread that kind of ties them all together. And I would just think that I would describe spiritual direction as just like, deep listening, deep listening on the part of the spiritual director to the directee to themselves, and both the directee and the director to the spirit. Mm-hmm.
Tremendous. I'm led to think of Father Ron Rolheiser, kind of a famous author and a spiritual mentor for many. He says the Holy Spirit's not a generic spirit, but the particular circumstances in which each one of us finds oneself. Accept the spirit of the life that you are in fact living. Accept the spirit of that God is already present here. We're not trying to draw into a vacuum, because God never turns his face from us as well. Even though, like you say, our stuff, it may be that I don't have a right to experience joy, that's not my, God's intention for me. And so, how these things get very complicated very quickly, and to untangle some of those threads and knots. Do you find that people, maybe are looking, Ignatius focuses on both the movements of consolation and desolation, the lingering joy, peace that are there. Are people good at naming those things, or do you kind of help name it back to them, April?
I generally I don't use that language generally. Sometimes if they name it, sometimes I will. I sometimes think of the Ignatian spirituality as kind of the white noise machine. You don't, I hear it, but they probably don't. And so I always meet them where they are. I use their language. So if they say joys, if they say sorrows, and I say joys and sorrows, unless they bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think, and we're approaching a break very quickly here, and so we'll have to maybe pause. But, the Ignatius, obviously rooted in the cross of Christ, the use of the imagination in prayer is a particular aspect of that. But we'll hear more from both of our ladies, Kathy Jordan and April Young.
Stay with us as we do continue our conversation with April and Kathy, our new spiritual directors at the Emmaus House in Des Moines. And to find out more about spiritual direction, go online to theemmaushouse.org. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
So just to kind of get us rolling after the break here, St. Claude de la Colombière, who's had a pretty famous spiritual directee, St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, founder of the Sacred Heart tradition. But he says, you should make up your mind once for all to choose one person to whom you make known your interior life. To change one's director every year is equivalent to never making any progress. And then, we do not so much talking about ourselves, but that together there's a dynamic that transcends both of ourselves. That's Joensen speak there, not St. Claude. But how does it not? We're awakening this desire perhaps for some people, or maybe they've made forays and it didn't go well. What would be your counsel? We'll start with April on this.
I would say it's, finding the right fit for a spiritual director is going to be different for everybody. And I've had the same spiritual director for over a decade. Sometimes you might meet somebody and I give somebody a new directee the freedom. If this doesn't work, it's a continual discernment. And if you don't think that I'm the right fit, you're not going to hurt my feelings. It's more important for that person to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel respected, to feel free to be the person that God made them to be, rather than to line up within like the same devotion to the same saint, or to have the same spirituality or same theology or the same spectrum of whatever.
And so, Kathy, for you, are you now, as you're into it and you have people seeking you out, are you trying to make little Kathy Jordans and clone you, which wouldn't be a bad thing for the world, but
that would not be good. That would not be good, Bishop. No, absolutely not. I think it's more about, allowing people to sometimes even just discover the beauty that they are, the amazing creation that they are. I think sometimes we lose sight of that in the busyness and everything that we're trying to accomplish and do and be. And sometimes in those quiet moments when, they're just listening to themselves talk or they're allowing the Spirit to speak through silence. You think, wow, I didn't know I thought that, or wow, I didn't know I was that good,
Because
I don't mean me. I mean, people think that. Yeah,
you were trying to say that, but because the director can't just simply say, "I unconditionally accept you. I unconditionally love you. Now let her rip."
Yeah.
I mean, that trust takes time, and I have found for certain directees, it took months, even more than a year, to allow that really to unfold, and so there has to be a certain patience that happens with this too. But silence, punctuating it, it's a consecrated silence. It's a pregnant silence, if you will, that things can happen. Where would one even go to find, a spiritual directee? I mean, obviously available through the Emmaus House and your role as assistant director, Kathy, in the diocese. But where do we go, Kathy, to find directees?
Yeah, you mean to find a spiritual director, you mean?
Yeah, director, excuse me.
Yeah. So, I think what you're saying, through Emmaus House, obviously there's spiritual directors there, and the diocese on the website has a list of spiritual directors as well. And John Gaffney, I think, is the contact for that
our
list.
Evangelization and mission.
Yeah, and he can kind of help people discern, what they're looking for, and he kind of knows the people on the list and can direct them in the right way.
So they've been affirmed, a kind of a validation by the diocese, that they possess the wherewithal and are trustworthy and have the competence for this. So, again, We all have the Spirit by virtue of our baptism, common call to holiness, but there are those for whom this is a particular charism. So does it ever happen, April, our last, that one might need to make a switch, or that it's not a happy relationship?
Sure. And I tell my directees, it's a continual discernment for both of us, for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But may the blessed directees that you have, and may others there, find that this is a charism of the church, a longstanding tradition, an act of the church, even if it's very personal and private at the same time. So thank you for the ways in which you help to lift up those people who are then lifting up the household of the church in the Diocese of Des Moines.
Well, this has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thank you to our guests and to all of our listeners in Iowa and Nebraska, Wisconsin, or wherever you may be listening to Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.